Good afternoon and welcome to the next session. For the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to be talking about networks and networking. So first of all, thanks very much to the Chase team for having me back, and thank you very much to Emma and the rest of the SAG as well for having me back. Thank you, folks. So networks. To me, networks are a set of people who are connected in some way. Networks can be more or less formal. They may have a shared interest in common. They may have a shared purpose in common. They may have a shared identity in common. But the connection, the relationships for me is what makes a network. So when I talk about networks in the next 45 minutes, I'm talking about networks in general. So I'm talking about a formal network where we all have badges that say Chase and we get together once a month or once every now and again and we're kind of in a network, as well as less formal networks, perhaps less formal research networks between colleagues, as well as more formal ones where you have perhaps a formal structure and a formal schedule of meetings and so forth. I mean, this morning, Vicky talked about Chase as being a network. And in a sense, even if Chase wasn't here, in some ways, you would all be a network because of your interests, because of the fact that you're researchers, you're PhD students, you're in the humanities. There's a connection there in some way. But the fact that this is Chase makes that connection stronger, makes those relationships stronger, and in a sense, that shared identity a bit stronger. And Vicky was also talking about the kind of the doctorates and then also the broader network of Chase. So, you know, networks are not homogeneous. Networks are not often easy to describe. They change, they're fluid, they're dynamic, they're creative, and they learn. Now, as for networking, which is the thing I'm going to start talking to you about, when I talk about networking, what I'm talking about is face-to-face networking. So what I saw you all doing this morning when you were grabbing your packs and having a coffee, what I guess some of you were doing out there just now in the break, what you'll be doing at lunchtime, and also, in a sense, what you're doing this afternoon where you begin to talk about themes and create your own networks. I'm talking about face-to-face networking, so being at an event, being in a room, whether it's a formal networking event, a conference, anywhere, and going up to someone you don't know, you have no idea who they are, and talking to them and meeting them. I'll touch a little bit on social media as well, but I'm mainly going to be talking about face-to-face networking. Okay, so we've got 45 minutes. Hands up who's ever done networking in the way that I'm talking about it. Okay, keep your hand up if you enjoy networking. Okay. It's safe to say the second lot of hands were lower in number than the first lot. Many, many people do not enjoy networking. And that's fine, but you still have to do it, sorry. But some people really enjoy networking and really kind of get a buzz off it and all the rest of it. I had a client, an academic coaching client I was working with once, and he hated networking, even though he did it. I mean, academics are great networkers. Academia, in effect, is all about networking. He hated it and refused to use the word ever. He said, no, I'm not networking. I'm going to a conference. I'm not networking. I'm never doing that. So we agreed on having a chat. So what he used to do is he used to say, yeah, I went to a conference. I had some good chats. Fine. Call it whatever you want to call it, but it's important. And even more so, I mean, Paul was talking earlier about this idea of impact and going outside, perhaps the 30. I love the idea of the 30 historians locked into an international kind of dark room that spans nations. But sometimes you'll kind of have to leave the room and go outside and go to different institutions, even non-academic institutions, even non-intellectual institutions. You might find yourself dealing with the kind of companies that I work with or work for. So it's about moving out beyond where you are. And what I'm going to talk you through now very briefly, and if I can borrow Andrea's term of practice-based research, I'm not going to talk you through concepts and underpinnings here. I'm just going to talk you from my experience how to get the most out of networking, so face-to-face networking. And I've got 6 principles for you. A couple of them are quite important, and I strongly suggest that you take them on board. The others are more or less optional. Overall, if it's useful, take it away and make it happen. If it's not, and you're already fantastic at networking, well, great. Come, let's catch up afterwards, and you can tell me your secrets. And as we go through, I know we're quite quick, but if you've got any questions, and you can shout from the back, then put your hands up, let me know. Also, can I just see hands up again? The people who enjoy networking, the people who do networking and enjoy networking. There was a few hands around the room. Okay, right. Consider yourselves experts, along with me, for the purposes of this session. If you have any advice as well, then put your hand up and let me know. So if there's something works in your context, just let me know. So first one, first principle of networking. The most important one, I'd say. Probably, if this is all you remember, just remember this. Be clear. Okay, understand why you're doing it. Networking, although the client I was telling you about said have a chat, it's not just about having a chat. In the same way that a network tends to work better if there's some kind of interest or purpose, networking has an end. Okay, there's a reason for doing it. You're researchers, you're interested in your research, you want to spend your time working on what interests you, so actually you don't have much time for networking. You don't have much time for being out and about and meeting strangers at conferences and things like that or wherever. So you need to use that time wisely. So one way of doing that is being clear about what you want from it. Okay, it could be lots of different things. It could be knowledge, contacts, relationships, opportunities, more avenues for research, placements for you guys over the next few years. It could be all kinds of things. It could be chocolate cake. Okay, that's what you could get from a networking event. I mean, when I went to one of my first networking, kind of regular networking events, when I first became a consultant many years ago, it was a strategy-themed networking event. So we used to go along once every week in central London and listen to kind of wise old people. You could tell they were wise and old because they had grey hair, and like me, and they were wise and old, and they told us all about strategy. So I went there for two reasons. Firstly, because I could go up to any person in that room and say, I have no idea about this aspect of strategy or organizations or change. Tell me about it. And by and large, they would just tell me the answers and tell me the stuff and share their experience. And the second reason was they always served food. And I didn't have a lot of spare cash for it at the time, and so I got free supper once a week, which was great. And there was a few drinks there as well. So, if you're going networking and it's just for the chocolate cake, that's great, or the coffee or whatever. Some nice pastries there this morning. Thanks, SAG. I guess you made that happen. If that's all it's about, that's fine. But there could be other things as well. So whatever you want to get out of networking, be clear about it before you start, because that will help you prioritize your time, prioritize your effort, your investment, the energy you put into it, but also help you make a decision about which events you go to and which events you don't go to, maybe which ones you go back to. I should say, by the way, there's kind of two aspects of networking I think that makes it really successful. One is practice, and getting good at it makes it easier. And the other is to get other people to do it for you. Okay? So don't just run around on your own trying to network and find contacts and all the rest of it. There's a way that you can help other people to do that for you. The second principle of networking, probably the most important one. I said the first one was important. Maybe they're all really important. Maybe I'm just going to keep saying that. This one is really important, though, and very obvious. But some people have a bit of an issue with it, which is just be there. Turn up. This is a networking event one of a series I ran. This was down in Folkestone, in the Creative Quarter down in Folkestone. This is obviously from outside. It's about not just turning up to the venue, but actually walking into the room. I had a kind of friend contact of mine, a woman who works in knowledge transfer, so really about the kind of sort of impact and external relationships, the kind of thing Paul was talking about. And she went to a networking event, which was vital. Okay, she was clear she had to be there. It was absolutely vital that she was there. There were a whole host of organizations who were going to be really useful for her in her role, and yet she spent 10 minutes in the car park. Okay, she was sat in the car for 10 minutes, just couldn't go into the room, just had a real freeze. Now, not everyone's that bad, okay? Not everyone's that bad with events, but sometimes you might find yourself get to an event and there's a big empty floor and there's a few people on the other side of it and you might not want to walk across the floor. Sometimes you might find yourself in a big full room full of people, but actually you don't really know how to start a conversation. Okay, so being there, being at the event, being at the place, but also being there in the room, okay? Putting yourself out there, getting into the mix. It's crucial and obvious, but worth mentioning. So formal networking events are one thing, and they're quite artificial kind of events. I mean, we have badges, and sometimes you do speed networking. Anyone done that? Speed networking? Kind of like speed dating, but not as exciting. Speed network. Okay, so networking. Formal events, there's a badge. You can walk around. You talk to people. Everyone knows why you're there. You're there to network. They're oddly artificial places, but they work. They can work. But there are all kinds of places that you should think about being. Okay, so some events are harder to get into than others. Some events you have to queue online to get the tickets, and sometimes you don't get the tickets. Some events you have to be invited to. Some you have to be a member of something to get there. Some you just have to know where they're going on, you can get there. So be there again. Even if it's not a networking event, it's worth being there. And when you're in the room, pay attention to what's going on, otherwise you miss what's going on the stage there. So Glastonbury, If you're there, it's great. And maybe it won't rain. So the other place you can be there when you're networking, this is a supermarket aisle with soft drinks. It could be the freezer aisle, might be the bread sometimes. But for me personally, there are two places where I seem to just run into people who I haven't seen for ages and who tend to be really important and I should think of something to say to them. One is in supermarkets aisles, bizarrely. I keep running into kind of seriously senior stakeholders in kind of Tesco Metro in London somewhere, central London somewhere, and have to sort of bump into them and go, hi, yes, I'm doing this thing with you at the moment, etc. The other place is on the Victoria Line tube escalator at St Pancras. Always, inevitably, just run into people. So as well as formal networking events and other events, conferences where networking happens, be ready for the other places where networking goes on, which is everywhere. And that's why it's important to be clear about what you want and to be clear about what you're going to be telling people about yourself. Going back to what I said about making other people network for you, the way to do that is by telling them about yourself, but telling them something memorable, giving them something they can take away with them, and then tell other people. And then they're networking on your behalf. So it might be about what you're researching, it might be about what you're interested in doing next, it might be about the dream placement you're looking for, it might be about the particular research context you want to work in, or the partner you're looking for, the interdisciplinary partner you're looking for. All of those things, if you just seed those ideas in other people's heads, and they know you, and you make a good impression, then when they're away and meeting someone else, they might tell them about you. So be clear about why you're going networking, and don't forget to be there. And you might have to go more than once. You might go to an event and it's just terrible. Okay? It just might be awful, and the worst thing you've ever been to. You might go to this event and kind of think, well, that was a waste of time, I met no one. You probably have to go twice. I mean, look, make your own decision, but sometimes it's just not the right evening, the right people weren't there. But if you go twice and it's terrible, you never have to go back ever again. Okay, so be there, be clear, and be there. Third one, this is probably very controversial, I think. Yeah, I think this is probably the most controversial thing I'm going to talk about. Maybe not, second most controversial. So third one, just be nice. Just really just be nice to people. I mean, if you're organising a party, who do you invite, horrible people or nice people? Hands up, who invites horrible people to their party? Good, okay, good, well, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, basically, just be nice. Getting other people to do your networking for you means being invited back. It means they think of you because they think, Tim's good value, Emma's good value. That Steve guy, I'm going to have him along, because actually he's good, he's kind of good to have along at networking events, he meets people, he gives a good buzz to the room. So you don't have to worry about being invited to events, people invite you. That's kind of your aim there. Just be nice. Does everyone know everyone knows what being nice is, right? Okay, can we just practice? Can we just practice being nice? Fantastic, that's great. Okay, let's just practice being nice. Just for 2 minutes, just humor me here, okay? Networking is about jumping into the unknown. Okay? It's about standing up out of your coveted seat that you'd like to sit in silence for the next 40 minutes and doing something different. Stand up, okay, just 2 minutes. Find someone you don't know next to you or nearby. Be nice to them, please. Just be nice to them. Find someone to be nice to. 2 minutes. Just be nice to them. Superb, superb. So, animated, enthusiastic, eye contact, smiling, looking like you're happy to be listening to the person talking to you. All of these things are nice. And when I say nice, I talk about simpatico. So, a nice person to hang out with, a nice person to talk to. When you're networking, just be nice to people. You'll get invited back. Don't be horrible. And nice looks like different things. So it can, maybe it is about waving the arms around, but not on TV, because we know that makes you look like Magnus Pike or, insane. Maybe it is about waving arms around, gesticulating and being really enthusiastic and happy and stuff. But, there are some very quiet, nice conversations going on there as well. It doesn't have to be all of this, It looks like different things. The other reason to be nice, though, is because it's a great way of differentiating yourself. Okay, because nice is not massively fashionable at the moment. Snark is fashionable, and irony, sarcasm, criticism, these are all very fashionable. Nice is not that fashionable. If you're nice, you stand out from the crowd as well. So that's another reason to do it. So don't forget to be nice. So be clear about networking, be there, be at the event, and when you're there, just be nice. And at a certain point, you will have to stop being nice. So, you have to walk away. And I told you to stop being nice there, and you all said, okay, Tim, fine, we've had enough niceness, we'll sit down now. You entertain us now, enough niceness. But when you're in a networking situation, you have to kind of self-manage. Because, okay, you found this person, they're fascinating, they're amazing, you can spend the rest of the next 2 hours of this event talking to them, but actually maybe you're missing out on some, yes, I'm shaking my head, missing out on some other opportunities because there's a room full of people and they could be the people to talk to. So, question. How long is the right amount of time to be nice if you realise that this person is not going to help you with this clear goal that you've got? Any guesses? Or opinions?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Anyone else?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. In terms of being nice to this person right now that you're talking to at a networking event, before you then go and move on to the other people, I'd say about 2 or 3 minutes is probably okay. At a networking event, don't forget they're weird places. Okay, but how do you leave someone? Don't forget, we still want you to be nice. So how do we stop talking to each other? You're talking to me and you're thinking, this Tim guy, he's not going to give me what I need. He's got none of the opportunities I'm looking for. I need to speak to some of these other fascinating people. So at that point, you need to say goodbye. How do you do that?
I just need to go to the loo.
Just need to go to the loo? Okay, I call that, that's like the panic button, okay? I'd call, that's the last resort, okay? Because don't forget, we're talking about personal brand here as well, so I'm not sure. But no, good, that can work. Anything else from anyone else?
Down your wine and say you're going to the bar.
Okay, again, that's a very strong brand message you're putting out there. I seem to finish my drink, goodbye. That can work, yeah.
You can just be honest, say, oh, it's been great speaking to you. I've just seen that, oh, there's that person, I must go and see that person.
Absolutely, absolutely. If it's a formal networking event that has the word networking somewhere, just absolutely that. Just go, great to meet you, I must just meet some more people. Completely, that's exactly what you can do. Really good to meet you, must meet some more people. It's fine, everyone will be doing that at that event, so it's okay. But if that doesn't work, then by all means, down your drink, go to the bar, and then if that doesn't work, go to the toilet. They will work as well. There's different ways of doing it. But it's okay just to say, thanks very much, on to the next one. I must just grab a cup of coffee. It's a kind of slightly less bar-ish version of the bar one. So be nice. And be nice when you say goodbye. And be nice lifelong, yes. Just generally, lifelong, let's be nice. I think it'd be cool if we were all just nice to each other for a change. It'd be great. Number 4. So, you know what you want from networking. You're confident about what you're going to get from networking. You're in an event. And you're being nice to people. So that's great. This is a good start. Okay, there's another thing you need to do as well. You need to be interesting. Okay? Now, I think the best way to be interesting is to be interested in other people and what they're doing, to ask questions and find out about them. But look, you're academics, so you have to be interesting about what you know about, right? I mean, that's part of the deal. So be interesting obviously about your research, your specialism, your area, but also about the landscape around you. So what's going on around you? This is a photograph. A friend of mine, Dan Simpson's a performance poet, but he's also was poetry in residence at Canterbury Roman Museum last year. He's poetry in residence at Knoll now. It's a sort of specialism he's bringing in terms of being a poet within historical buildings and then doing something interesting. And he walked the Roman road from Shooters Hill to Canterbury. At times in partnership with a historian or an archaeologist, as he walked along and just kind of experienced the landscape. And what he told me was one of his biggest learnings was just walking it was just an amazing experience, rather than jumping on a train or a bus or driving or something like that. But just slowing down and exploring what's around, what's off the beaten track, but even what's on the well-tarmacked road that perhaps you just didn't see it in a different way before. So part of being interesting, I would suggest, is about knowing more than just what you know and exploring around that, knowing things around that. What's going on around you in other areas of research? What's going on for all the people that are in this room? What's going on in Chase? What's going on in the landscape that Chase occupies, the environment that Chase occupies? Kind of, keep that stuff in mind so that you can have a conversation. Because, I was talking to a couple of people earlier, Helena and Hannah, thank you for this. And we were talking about what's difficult about networking. And they're saying different things, but sometimes it's about starting a conversation, and sometimes it's about keeping a conversation going. And so if you have this ability, if you have this knowledge about kind of not just about what you're interested in, but what other people might be interested in, that's a great way of starting a conversation and a great way of keeping it going. The other way to be interesting is to kind of look beyond your feet, I guess towards the horizon. So what's happening next? This is a photographer, Hope Fitzgerald, who was part of the piece Vigil at the Folkestone Triennial last summer, which was a suspended platform at the top of the Burston Hotel overlooking Folkestone Harbour. And there was a series of vigils carried out by different people for different reasons and in different ways. Again, quite experiential sort of contemporary sculpture. What I like about this is, to me, it kind of absolutely captures the idea of paying attention to what's going around you, because if you're sitting this high up on a platform that's strung up with rope, you need to pay attention. But also take time to look beyond, take time to look at the horizon, take time to look at what's happening next. So in your area of specialism, whatever it is, what's happening next? And we've heard about digital, the impact of digital technology, digitization. I like the idea of the difference between digitalization gives you information, but scholars give you knowledge when you use the digital. But we've heard about that impact. What else is going on? What are the trends that are going on? What's happening next? All of these things are things to be aware of. Not just to be interesting in the moment, because that can make you interesting because you know what you're talking about, but also so that you can start spotting opportunities. What's coming up? What's happening next? What can you connect to? What can you be part of, which will amplify what you're doing? The other really good reason is so that you don't look blank-faced when someone mentions something and says, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to the Chase Encounters event. And if you haven't heard of it, you go, what's that? Good to know what people are talking about, so you can just nod wisely and say, yep, absolutely, I agree, I'm part of your network, I understand what you're talking about. So, be clear, be there, be nice, be interesting. Now, I'm betting that all of you can be interesting. I stake vast sums of money on that. So let's practice being nice and being interesting. 2 minutes, find somebody different, not the person you spoke to next time, please. This may involve walking a little bit further than the person next to you. So, find somebody else, be nice to them, and this time be interesting and interested. Find out a bit about them. So fifth principle is just be useful. And it can, in a couple of different ways you can do this. In the room, be useful. One of the best ways to be useful is to know where the coffee is. That's an incredibly useful thing to know if you're at a networking event or a conference. Twice, I've actually kind of ended up with quite large contracts, and once a really good client that I stayed with for several years because they didn't know where the coffee was. Absolutely true. They were just wandering lost and tired and needed coffee. And I think after that, after I showed them where the coffee was, they felt eternally grateful for me having provided them with caffeine that morning. I don't know. But yeah, know where the coffee is. And also, know who's in the room. And don't, know who the people are. If you're talking to somebody and you know there's someone else that would be really useful for them to talk to, put them in touch. Either if it's at the event, put them in touch, or afterwards you could put them in touch as well. People will remember that in the same way that being interested is a great way to be fascinating. Helping other people, being useful for them, helping them network is a great way for them to, in turn, network you. So get you networked. So be useful. You can also be useful in very practical ways. There's 2 ways, I guess, that you can be incredibly useful. One is at the event. Have some way of me easily remembering who you are and how to contact you. So, it used to be business cards. And I personally would say business cards are still quite a good thing to have because it's a very quick, non-battery, non-Wi-Fi dependent way of sharing crucial information in a second or 2. So I'd suggest still give business cards a go. Does anyone in this room have a business card? Okay, good. So they don't need to be complicated. They don't need to have a title on them. They're just your name and the way you'd like people to get in touch with you. Email or phone or Twitter. If you're absolutely kind of like, anti-analog, I don't know what the opposite of a Luddite is, like a anti-Luddite, I don't know. But if you're like anti-analog and you just only want digital stuff, then I guess use Twitter or use some kind of clever business virtual card sharing thing. But, until that's perfect and seamless and works every single time, I'd always have an analog backup personally. Twitter can work really well. Lots of people use Twitter. But just make sure you have a name which you can say out loud, is decent, and memorable. That would be useful. So all those things are useful. The other thing you can do is if you meet me at a conference, networking event, and we have a great conversation, and you think I can help you with something, follow up the next day. Okay, follow up as quickly as possible and remind me, because I probably meet, I don't just mean, I'm talking about me because I know who I am, but you know, you might be lots of different people. So all of them, the same thing will apply. Follow up. Hi Tim, it's so-and-so, we met yesterday, we talked about this. It'd be really great if you could send me the thing you talked about, or if you could put me in touch with the person we've discussed. Follow up. Even if you don't do it the same day, you know, within kind of 4 or 5 days of the conference, after that I've forgotten who you are, probably. Okay? Even if you're really nice and really interesting, I may have forgotten who you are. However, to my mind, the longest you can leave it after an event before you follow up is lifelong, borrowing the word of my friends earlier. I think you can wait, you can follow up months later, a year later. It's absolutely fine, as long as you've got a reason for doing that. Say, look, oh, you know, we met last year at this conference and we talked about X. I've just been at this conference. It'd be really good to catch up. What's going on? Yeah, it might come to nothing, but it's a quick email, and it might turn into something. So even if you don't follow up for whatever reason immediately, follow up later. Okay? So be useful. Help the other person out. And finally, I keep saying this. How many times? I said this 6 times. This is the most important principle. Okay, they're all really important. This is really important, though. This is the most important thing that you should probably take away is this, which is be you. So what I'm not suggesting is that you kind of bolt on or kind of act differently or dress differently or be differently or anything like that. Think about the kind of principles I'm talking about. That's why I call them principles rather than kind of rules or laws or something. I mean, you know, ignore them if you want to. This one's really important though. When you're networking, kind of be you. Okay, you know, maybe you're doing a sales pitch, maybe you'll exaggerate slightly, but don't outright lie or pretend to do something you don't do, or pretend to be a person you're not, because then you'll have to be that person every single time you meet them, which is quite tiring, unless you're a professional actor. So, you know, just be you. Do this stuff, be nice, be you being nice, be you being interesting, be you being knowledgeable about what's going on around you and what's going on kind of next year and the next 5 years. Pretty important. Before we get on to, I'm going to talk briefly, and I'm conscious of lunch. I know you're not. I know you're absolutely not. You're absolutely riveted, and you're not thinking about lunch at all, but I'm conscious of it slightly. Before we get to talking about formal networks, any questions about networking, the kind of thing I've been describing, or any advice from anyone else who's a good networker that I haven't mentioned?
Business cards on the internet, there's an advert on the TV, YouTube, it gives you a discount, 18 quid, 1,000 business cards. Boom, they come in the post and you get a free business card holder.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay.
I call this the fat man on the coach the conference story. Neurolinguistic programming, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So I sat next to the fat man. I don't normally sit next to fat men and coaches, and he turned out to be a very senior person. A year later, I was working in that organisation. What
amazing. Did everyone hear that? No. Okay, so this is the fat man on the coach story. And Linda doesn't normally sit next to fat men on coaches, but she did and made an exception. And he turned out to be massively important, and it led to her working for the organisation he worked for. So, and the point about, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So there is something about, as I asked you to do just now, you know, step up, walk across the room, be nice to someone you don't know who they are. You know, sit somewhere different, go to a different event, try out new behaviours. Okay, anyone else? Any advice or questions, quickly?
This was kind of all about what you get out of the networking event, but I've always felt it's quite important to kind of have something to offer as well, because, you know, obviously people are more interested in talking to you if they think you're going to be useful to them as well as they being useful to you. Absolutely,
absolutely, yeah, and completely. I mean, you know, I'd say start with thinking about what you want from the event, but absolutely, hopefully if you're being nice and being interesting and you're bringing what you're bringing with you, hopefully you'll be useful for that event. You will be contributing to it. I mean, I think in a formal networking event, it's understood that everyone's there to kind of meet people and kind of gain something. But I think you're right. If you're meeting colleagues perhaps at an academic conference, or if you're at some other kind of event where it's not that clear set in terms of this is a networking, definitely be generous. Absolutely. Be generous with your kind of knowledge and attention. Yeah.
Yeah, just aligned to that. I mean, one of the things I always tell my doctoral students is if you're attending something like a conference which will have networking opportunities and you know who's got a delegate list, then do some preparation. So look down at who do I want to meet, but not just that. What might be an interesting thing I could say to them. I recently had a job interview, and I knew that I was going to meet the department. So obviously, I kind of looked up all the department and thought of something, and people seemed amazed that I knew what they were doing. I was like, of course I've looked you up. You're interviewing me for a job, but that kind of element of foreplanning.
So so there's a point there about planning, and before you go, if you know the people who are going to be there, then research them, look them up. And when you're there at a conference, and there's one here today, there's a delegate list. It tells you who's here and what their kind of area is or what they do. So have a look through that. Do a bit of planning, a bit of preparation. Don't just walk in blind. Of course, if you're in the supermarket aisle, you can't always do that. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, time for one last question or tip.
All right, I've got a question.
Go for it.
I don't really mind going up to people if they're by themselves, but when you're alone and there's lots of groups and they're all very absorbed, how do you break into that without sort of just sliding up and looking a bit?
Okay, well, you've just given me the answer that's not the answer. Okay, so do not sidle up and look weird. Okay, that's the wrong approach. So the question was, if you're on your own at a conference, networking or something like that, there's lots of groups and they're all absorbed. What do you do? How do you enter the conversation? When you're in a group, be aware. And if you find yourself kind of circling the wagons a little bit, sometimes you might get really absorbed and there's nowhere, open out a little bit, just look around. Maybe there is someone who wants to come in. Doesn't answer your question, but I'll come to that right now. Don't sidle and look weird. You can jump in. Basically, you can kind of the answer is just join, pick one and join it. Pick the one that looks most interesting and have confidence in the fact that whatever they're talking about, you will add to it. Okay? In the way this lady would say, that you'll add to it. So I don't have a magic trick, but it's just do it. Because actually, they'll be delighted. Because probably the same person's been talking along for the last 5 minutes and they're bored of it now. So, someone new to talk about. Okay. I need to talk briefly about formal networks and kind of creating a network, which I know you're going to do this afternoon. And I don't really have a recipe for that, but I've got a few ideas for you to think about. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll wrap up, and then it's lunch and fresh air and all that kind of good stuff. And maybe even some networking. Formal networks. So I said earlier, for me, a network is people who are connected in some way. And what I'm going to talk about now is if you decide to set up a network. So it's not joining a network that already exists. It's not being a sub-network as part of something which has been existing, but it's just starting from scratch, saying, right, the 6 of us, we're all interested in this, or the 20 of us, we're all interested in this. Let's form a network. First of all, I have a question for you, and you don't have to stand up and move around for this. Just kind of with the people around you, and it's tough because it's almost as if this was designed to have an audience listening to one person. It's really, really tough to have multiple conversations going on here for some reason. So, but if you could just kind of talk to the people around you. Question is, are you part of a network, and why? Okay, just take kind of 2 minutes, have a chat, people around you. Is anyone in your discussion group that you're going to kind of form instantaneously now part of a network? Why? Why are they part of a network? I'm really interested in why you might be part of a network. Take 2 minutes and then we'll hear from you. Thank you. Let's bring you back, folks. So, anyone from any of those spontaneous groups that just emerged, anyone at all, why do you belong to a network? Why join a network? Anyone?
To share information.
To share information? Anyone else?
Friendship.
Friendship. Anyone else?
Common interest.
Common interest. There are different reasons to belong to a network and different purposes, different reasons for networks to exist. And generally speaking, they're either about the members or they're about the outside or they're a mix of both. So they could be about getting together to lobby an organisation over here, or getting together to create an event or something, or getting together to publish something. Emma mentioned earlier they're not expecting publications tomorrow from the networks, but maybe in some case, sometime in the future. So sometimes networks are about producing something or creating something or influencing something in the outside, and sometimes they're about support or friendship or fun. Or collaboration or learning. And sometimes it's a mixture of the two. So just think about why the network's being created, but also start to think about how you can then convey that to other people if your network's going to grow, because networks are alive in a sense, they're fluid, they're dynamic. These are some questions to think about. And I just ask you kind of why. I kind of asked you the first one there. So what's the network for? And why should people join? You know, assuming that you want people to join, maybe you don't. Maybe you want the network to be 6 or 10 strong and that's it. I've had enough of that. No more people now. We've got all the people we need. But typically, networks are connected to the environment. Networks are dynamic. They're organic. They're a little different to organizations, to kind of formal hierarchical structures. And yet you need some kind of way of connecting. And probably that will mean some kind of formality. It might mean an event like this. It might mean some kind of online connectivity. It might mean discussion boards or groups online. It might mean an email that goes around. It might be a conference call. It might be Skype. There's some kind of connection. And it's as much about human connection as it is about transferring information or knowledge. Because networks are fundamentally the people in them. And so as you care for the network, you're caring for the relationships that make it, okay? That amplify those individuals. Which brings me to who will keep it alive and is it working? So networks are not magic. I mean, they're not, okay? They're just not. Okay, you don't go, right, we're a network, excellent, all our problems are solved now. Generally speaking, they require looking after. They require maintenance, if you prefer the kind of mechanistic view, or they require nurturing, if you'd like to call it that instead. Networks need looking after, sometimes by all of the members. Sometimes they just emerge and evolve spontaneously. Sometimes 1 or 2 people just need to step up and kind of look after things, particularly at the beginning. So this afternoon, as you begin to think about themes and create networks, throughout the course of being part of Chase, as you grow as a network yourselves and as you create different networks between each other and as they move and shift. Think about networks as something which is much more organic. So to me, a network is a kind of an ecosystem. It exists within an environment. It grows perhaps in unexpected ways. And this is a mature network, one that's been growing for a long time. Any gardeners in the room? Okay, gardeners. What's the secret of gardening? How do you make a garden grow and make it lovely and beautiful and the way you want it to be? Prune it, water it, feed it. Get a gardener. That's a fantastic idea. Yeah, so your network, a network that's created for the first time, and not, when Alex earlier, Vicky earlier was mentioning the interdisciplinary networks that already exist. So there are networks that already exist that you can be part of. You know, there are gardens in full flourish that you could add to. But in some sense, if you're starting from scratch, this is your network to begin with. It's a very, very different prospect. And it might need pruning, but probably not yet. And it probably does need water and food, and it might need an expert gardener. So it might not just evolve on its own if everyone just scatters to the 4 corners of the world and leaves the network alone. It might not exist on its own. But one thing it does need is patience and time, and allowing it to evolve. So just some ideas about a formal network for you. And that is the end of my session, and that is lunch. Thank you very much. Thank you.